So we're on the Amir Tsafati channel, and I'm always following the Middle East for lots of reasons. I find the Middle East to be extremely valuable. It is God's time clock, so everything that happens in the Middle East totally indicates what's going on. And a picture of Amir himself, dashing man that he is. He used to be with the IDF, as you all know. And he's got some good insights and first-hand information on what's happening continually. You can read a lot of what's on the screen. I'm leaving it at that size so that you can read along. Some of it triggers the algorithm, so I tend to sort of steer away from going deeply into some of the news bulletins. I am reading it as I speak to you, which makes it obviously, telegraphic style communication and talking. But I do see lots of information that seems to be very valuable in terms of just exactly what's going on with Iran attempting to stage their next attempt, which is going to obviously bring in Ezekial 37, 38. And I'm always looking out for viable pieces of information that relate to the proximity of that event, because that surely is the trigger, worldwide trigger. It's going to be the ultimate panic attack that's going to echo across the world. And just a couple of days before that, we will have heard the words peace and security, and we're going to see the rapture occur immediately after that. It's going to be one of those situations where, I don't know if you've been to one of those stage shows at Disney World or at Universal Studios, where everything is exploding, like every part of the set is now on fire. Everything looks horrific, and it doesn't look like you're going to make it, and the hero steps in and rescues the heroine, and he takes her up for the wedding, and there's a big bridegroom meets the bride, and it's a Zorro moment, and that's what we're basically going to see. I think there's no other way that humanity is going to not see that, because we're all going to need to look back on the earth and say, we did not want to be there. That got really bad. So this is some of the, there we go. I don't want to use certain target words here, but you can get the idea that there's a lot of this happening in and around the areas of the Middle East. That's pretty intense. Through the night skies. I mean, that's all the fireworks you need around this time of the year. And it's intensifying. It's becoming more and more intense. So that's Yemen. And we're seeing a lot more of that all the time. If you want to just freeze or, go onto the Telegram channel, you're always able to get the news directly through Amir. But what I find is fascinating is that it is all moving in the direction of this final staged event, the final event, which is going to trigger the rapture, and it's going to trigger the great tribulation. We can hear it now that Israeli strikes on Iranian targets south of Homs. That's happening. He's giving us a little bit of an international feed as well. Australian Home Secretary Kay Andrews declares HEZ and all its arms as problematic. Of course, we've seen this. There's also international reaction to what's going on, and more breaking news from the IAEA. And let me see if there's anything of value that's coming out of the financial markets. Are very edgy at the moment, very, very edgy. And let's see if there's anything else that I could probably pick out and say this is worth taking into account. The nuclear program still continues unabated. No matter how many times they try to get involved with that, it just stays in place. They're not going to give up their big guns. It's not going to happen. Not good. Not good. I mean, the whole world is in a state of turmoil right now. And Amir's book is being is growing up the charts. That's pretty good. It's his way of getting the word out, of getting people to, because of their interest or fascination in the Middle East, it gets them to hear about Christ in a kind of a roundabout way, but it's an evangelical tool. I can understand that. Israeli ships in the waters of Bahrain, right in front of Iran, as part of the joint exercise. So they have all these joint exercises happening, and you can see that from the most basic level, all of these militarized, institutionalized military-industrial complexes, they're all working together. Everyone is working together at the core, right? At the core, everyone is working together. You know, it's one thing for a country like Israel, 12,990 square meters, to have the problem of all of these very hostile neighbors, and there's always some activity. I mean, the restrainer is definitely alive and well in the world, keeping back darkness, because it's hard to believe that this tiny little stone of a country, this tiny little place, you know, it's a little puzzle piece on a puzzle board, can actually can still exist. You know, the United Nations, 14th of May 1948 and 1949 basically enacted it, stating that it was a nation from its first inception, formed in a day. And there it is. It's still around. Hasn't been destroyed. You know, with all of those, with 1 billion plus enemies, almost 2 billion people desiring, wishing to destroy Israel, and they're still in place. And then obviously Hanukkah is in place right up until the 6th of December. And I don't think there's much news at this moment, anything that sort of looks like it's, you know, there doesn't, let's have a look at this. Yeah, it's sad. It's an all-out attack on protesters, people that are protesting this new economic world order. It's definitely a something that seems to be more on the up and up. And you can see the role of these guys. Antifa were brought into place quite literally to bring about, to denigrate the good, peaceful protesters, right? Because people start lumping the two together, and that's a problem, because they're not. There's peaceful protest, and there's Antifa and their Clinton-sponsored agenda. So let's go. Let's have a look at this. First candle of Hanukkah is marked on the walls of Jerusalem's old city. It's beautiful. And of course, invisibly behind the scenes, not the same God, right? Not the same God. This is the reason why there is a war in the Middle East. where there is continual tensions, has been for thousands of years, right? Thousands of years, is because it's not the same God. And those who try to make alliances to bring about all nations under one God, it's like which God? Well, it's not YHWH. YHWH is God. But you know, the world doesn't want that level of accountability to the real God. They don't mind worshiping a God that allows them to sin, but any form of accountability that brings about a level of justice is not acceptable by the masses in general. So, from the perspective of what seems to be happening, there doesn't seem to be much in the way of genuinely different news. I don't know how Amir keeps this channel filled with content and so much writing. I mean, he spends a lot of writing this, a lot of time writing it. And thank you, Amir. This is awesome. You know, it's really amazing. It's actually incredible, the amount of information that he's able to pull out of the Middle East when we consider just how much we do hear about Israel or the Middle East from other sources. Very little. So it's actually quite astounding. By the way, if you hear me hesitate and you don't hear me for a few seconds, it's because I'm reading. I'm actually trying to figure out whether this is something to report on or not, whether it's something to talk about or not. I love anything related to archaeological excavations and discoveries. You've no doubt understood that I have a penchant for Indiana Jones Adventures and Nathan Drake, Uncharted. So, I'm always keen on pretty much seeing what is happening in the world of archaeology. Let's look at this. Interesting. So we're near the end of this feed, and I thought I'd share it with you because I'm going through it anyway. It's worth sharing it with my brothers and sisters. And if there's anything that comes up that requires for me to talk about it, well, then that's what I do. So thanks so much for joining.